Welcome, everybody. Kelly Khatchadourian, top of the morning to you. Here, I'll let you unmute. Everybody's muted. You're coming
and
in.
to you.
Top of, are you Irish, Kelly?
No, I'm just named Irish.
Yeah, me too. I am fake Irish because my mother was put into foster care when she was a little girl. And she was raised, even though she was Jewish living in Harlem, she was raised by an Irish family. So I grew up with a lot of Irish traditions. So I am fully in. I feel like it's not really, does it look like it's really here? I gotta make it. Okay. All right, folks, everybody is muted upon entry because we have to, this is just not right. Hold on. I'm going to put this in. As you guys are coming down, I got to make this better. Okay. And we're waiting for our speakers who are not yet here. I hope you're here.
Taleen's here. I will spotlight her really quick.
Okay, make her a co-host. So just a reminder, everybody, that we are keeping you. Hi, Taleen. Okay, we're going to make you a co-host, Taleen. How do I do that?
I got it, Judy.
Got it. Okay, yay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Top of the morning or the evening to you. Thank you for joining us. We are very happy to have you here. I'm going to take off this hat very soon because it's really quite itchy to have a beard. In fact, I'm going to get off right now. So we are excited for all of the folks who could join us today. See, even though I don't have my hat on, I still have my leprechaun from Ireland t-shirt because I actually believe in leprechauns. So hoping everybody's having a great day. We are offering Spanish interpretation for those of you who need it. And I'm going to ask Lorna, our interpreter. Oh, everybody who's an English speaker should go down to interpretation and choose your language as English. And I'm going to ask Lorna to say in Spanish how to choose Spanish interpretation. Thank you. Okay, I realized that Sonni didn't get to see me in my full outfit, so I'm going to put it on right now so that she sees my St. Patrick's Day outfit. Okay, so, okay, now I'm taking it out because I'm actually putting it in my mouth, and that was disgusting.
Thank you. I wouldn't have wanted to miss that.
Yeah, I know. I think it's important. I hope it didn't make you labor. I know that was a little bit shocking. Thanks everybody for joining us on this lovely day. We are so happy to have some great speakers to present on a topic that they know more about than I do because they are actually helping people move into their second year. So I know that there's a lot of people on this in this meeting who have not even gone into the self-determination program yet. But once you do, you will get to your second year eventually. And it is something that, since these are the pioneers who are going into their second year now, we've asked the Guidelight group folks to come in and help talk about it and how you go through your budget meeting and your spending plan for the second year. There are still some issues that we still need to work out and be in touch with DDS to get some consistent guidance on this. But we are so happy that that we are even in, people are even in going past it. Before we move forward, literally as this meeting started, DDS released its latest numbers on the self-determination program, so that I'm going to share with you right now. So you will see things are not good. What we are seeing here is that I know this looks very small. Can I zoom it in? Did that zoom in for you guys or just for me? Did it? No?
It zoomed in for everyone, Judy.
Okay, okay, good. All right, so you'll see here that the number of participants are still only at 499, which is not great, and you'll see also that there are some regional centers with still this star here. And what the star means is that they have less than 10 people in the program. Because of privacy reasons, government agencies are not allowed to list the numbers of people that meet a certain criteria if their number is less than 10 in order to maintain privacy. So you will see that some of these numbers you'll see here that Alta Regional Center has 179 spaces that they can fill and yet have less than 10 people in the program. We don't know exactly what that number is, but we know it's less than 10. We are also seeing the same issue with Golden Gate Regional Center, the same issue with North Bay Regional Center, the same issue with South Central Regional Center, and the same issue with Tri-Counties. I guess I should congratulate Inland Regional Center, who now has 17, which means that they can be certainly talked about. It's over 10, however, their total number is 256, which means they're still at less than that's still a whole small amount. 17 divided by 256. They're still at 0.06%. So that is a very, very, very small amount of people. And so what we're really trying to do is to move people in as quickly as possible. If you're from one of the regional centers that is doing better, like Kern, congratulations. Although with Kern, you had 28 of your 41 were actually in the pilot. And then at East LA, there were 18 out of their 34 in the pilot. So really, if you want to see where numbers are really good, I would say San Diego is doing probably the best in the state as far as pushing in numbers. Valley Mountain is doing quite well. And Central Valley is doing quite well. I mean, nobody's doing well. Let me rephrase that. Nobody's doing well. They're just not doing as bad as some of the others. Even my own regional center has 17 out of 64 participants in. So that's really quite problematic, and we really need to work together to break down those barriers and get folks. I'm going to stop sharing. We'll try to get that document out on social media as well. So today, as I said, our topic is the moving into your second year and how to prepare for that. And the biggest advice I'm sure you're going to hear is prepare early, prepare very early. I know that somebody already has their hand raised. We're going to take questions in a little while after the presentation, but that's good, Sean, that you were showing that how to do that. So the best way to get my attention is not to actually raise your hand, because there's so many people on this meeting that I can't see you all. The best way is to use the raise hand features. And you can find that by going to reactions, clicking on raise hand, and you'll see this little hand come up above you. If you are for some reason unable to find the raise hand feature, you can write something in the chat. We're going to then ask you to unmute yourself. And we'll do that through as we control it. The reason we're having to be a little bit more controlling than we used to be, we used to let people unmute themselves, but just in the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of Zoom bombers coming in at local advisory committees in the self-determination program. And so we at DBU have taken a few extra security measures, because what I was in one of those meetings, it was horrible. It was just absolutely horrible. So we are just not, we don't want to have any danger. And the only people who can share screen are those people that we put in as co-hosts. So I'm hoping we've done everything that we need to do to prevent Zoom bombers. So I now like to introduce Sonni. Are you going first or is it Taleen?
Taleen is going to share her screen, and
Okay.
I'll talk first, and then I'm going to pass it off to you, Taleen.
Okay, so I'd like to present the incredible leaders of the Guidelight group. Sonni Charness is the founder and CEO, president, chief of the world of Guidelight group, and is about to leave on maternity leave tomorrow. No, Friday.
Yeah, sometime in the next week.
Okay, we wish her amazing luck with her baby, and we're very excited for you and bringing a new self-determined life in the world. Who I know babies are very self-determined. They want their food. Yeah. So excited to have you. So go ahead and also Taleen Khatchadourian. Did I say it right? Yes, I think I did. Khatchadourian, who is also an independent facilitator with the Guidelight group. Do you have some folks who we maybe haven't highlighted yet who are also going to be presenting with you, Taleen?
Not from Guidelight group, but we do have one of our parents
clients.
And participants, yeah, that is here, and we would like to, so when we get to that point, I'll let you guys know, we can have her join us as well.
Okay, and we'll make her co-host. Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
All right, so take it away, Sonni.
Thank you.
All right, let me share my screen. I apologize. There we go. Is it up?
There we go. Looks good to me. Is that okay? I rely on Ed for things like this.
That's perfect, Taleen and Sonni. That's perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start us off and then pass it off to the wonderful Taleen, who's going to lead us through. Today I'm going to talk about transitioning from one year to the next year in the self-determination program. So of course, for most of us right now, we're transitioning from our first year in the self-determination program to the second year. But the same process is likely to apply every time we transition into a new year. So we're going to talk about lessons learned so far and how to prepare. Next slide. So just quick introductions. My name, Judy already introduced us, but my name is Sonni. I'm the founder of Guidelight Group and an independent facilitator. I'm here with Taleen Khatchadourian, who is also an independent facilitator with Guidelight Group. And you're going to hear later from our amazing client and her mom, Nassreen and Roberta, who have just completed their transition or Nassreen's transition from year 1 to year 2 in self-determination. So you can hear what that experience was like. And just very briefly about Guidelight Group, we support teens and adults in the self-determination program as independent facilitators. And we also do independent facilitator coaching and training. And we're going to be launching some training for self-advocates and family members who want to take control of their own self-determination programs later this year too. So a little bit about us. Okay. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Taleen, to go take it from here.
So from our experiences, we're finding that there's really these 6 steps that I'm going to go over and highlight each one individually in a minute. But really, it starts off with reviewing your current spending plan, updating your PCP, meeting with the regional center for your self-determination IPP, and reviewing that PCP with them, and then discussing some of the unmet needs or new needs that may have come up, completing some assessments if necessary, and then agreeing to the budget and creating a new spending plan. So I'm going to go into detail on each one of these steps as we go. And we want to start with reviewing your current year spending plan. So we highly recommend that you start at least 2 to 3 months before your annual renewal date. Keep in mind that everyone is doing this for the first time. So a lot of the regional centers are seeing, each one of our cases are a little bit different. So The regional center needs some time to get through some of the material and some of the information, and as do each one of us. So we highly recommend that you review your spending itself and compare it to the current spending plan for the current year. Are there any areas that have changed? Have you spent more than you should have? Do you have unused funds in an area where maybe your needs may have changed over the course of the year? Obviously, this year with the pandemic, we've had quite a bit of changes throughout the year. A lot of things that were expected didn't happen and new things happened. So determine your spending needs for the remainder of your self-determination year and decide if you need to move any funds and go ahead and move to meet those needs. And then once that's done, make sure that you're submitting an updated spending plan to the regional center for the remainder of this particular self-determination year. Okay, that's really important. And Sonni, jump in if you want to add anything to any one of these slides.
Okay, I think we have some suggestions here, but the point is 2 to 3 months before your self-determination first year is going to end, you want to look at how you're doing with your spending, because if you're spending a little bit faster in some areas, you might need to move a little bit of extra money there so that you can have services through the end of the year. If you haven't used some of your services, you might want to think about how you want to spend those funds differently if you only have 2 or 3 months left. So that's really the recommendation here.
Big suggestions and big takeaways here is please make sure that your FMS is involved in the process whenever you make changes to your spending plan, even if it's throughout the year. If you have an independent facilitator, make sure that they're also informed or involved in the process of making those changes to the spending plan. And then after the spending plan is approved by the regional center, confirm that your FMS has received the necessary paperwork they need to apply those changes to your account. Typically, this would be called a purchase of service authorization or a POS, but it's really important to make sure that that information gets to them and that they're updating their files as well so that they can track your continued spending. The next step is updating your PCP. So within 2 to 3 months before your annual renewal date, you're going to find that there's going to be some years that your life and goals kind of stay the same from one year to the next, and your PCP will need small changes. Maybe one goal might be a little bit different. Maybe something slight has changed in terms of your interests and you want to make those changes. So you can make those changes on your own with your independent facilitator, with someone from your circle of support. Those things can be done fairly easily. But then there's going to be those other years when things are going to be more substantial. You'll have years where your life and your goal may change a lot. A good example would be graduating from high school or college or moving out. So when we have those years where we have more substantial changes, we want to make sure that you've got the right people involved. So you decide who's going to help facilitate your new PCP, who will attend that meeting, and what that PCP will look like. It may be a completely new PCP at that point. Decide if you want to keep or change your services, your service providers, including some of your staff, your independent facilitator, your FMS. Those are all great decisions to make, and you can make those changes at this point.
Let me jump in because there was a question in the chat, and I don't want to lose anyone right at the start. So there was a question from Kelly in the chat about what do we mean by the spending plan for the remainder of the year, and some regional centers are starting over at the birth date and some at the SDP year. So what we mean in this presentation is when you start the self-determination program, your budget and your plan is for 12 months. You can start the self-determination program on any day. So each person has a different start date, and it's not always aligned with your birthday. So what we mean is, that clock starts ticking like on your spending and on that year, the day you transition into the program for the first time. And then it's 12 months from there. So So that's what we mean by an SDP year. It's when it's a year from when you started in the self-determination program. And so if you started April 1st, 2020 in the self-determination program, then a few months, 2 to 3 months before that, that's when we're suggesting that you would start this process. And the first step is look at how you're doing on your spending and see if you need to make any changes to your spending plan so that the funds are in the right place for you to get through the end of your first year. So that's the first step. And then the second step is to work on your PCP and your goals for the second year. So I hope that clarifies.
And also, I think that's a great question because I actually had the same question with a couple of the regional centers. So we traditionally are used to IPPs being in the birth month. The self-determination IPP could actually happen whenever you transition into self-determination for the first time, and that becomes your annual. Some of the regional centers are combining them and having the, it might be because they're close or whatever their reason, but they're doing their annual reviews during the same time as the transition, self-determination transition IPP, while others are keeping them separate and having this SDP IPP separate and then doing the annual review on the birth month. So that may have also contributed to the difference in the terminology. Okay, so the next step would be to meet with your regional center for your self-determination IPP, as I was just mentioning. So about a month and a half to 2 months before your annual review date, you want to take that new PCP or the updated one and meet with your service coordinator for that annual SDP IPP meeting. And then of course you can invite service providers if that's appropriate. You can invite your circle of support if that's appropriate. You would basically be able to have that meeting with the support that you need. At that time, you're reviewing your goals from the prior year and the progress that you've made over that year towards those goals. And then you would also review how much of your budget was actually spent and if your needs were met. And this is an important element because there are times when, like I said earlier, that things might change and we want to make sure that the budget was actually spent on the things that you needed. And if anything changes, we want to be prepared for the second year or the continual year. You would review and update that PCP with that team. And then you would also discuss any unmet or new needs that may have come up at that time. Okay. Step 4, completing the assessment for any new services. So there are times, so about a month to a month and a half before your annual renewal date and after that PCP meeting that you would have had with the regional center, you may find that your new needs might need an assessment to determine the amount that would be included in your new budget. So if you, I'll give you a perfect example. You decided through the first year that you did great with one set of services, but suddenly in your second year, you decide that there's a different service that you would like that requires in the traditional system to have an assessment to determine what that service is going to look like, how many hours or what the cost would be. Then at that point, you would make sure that that assessment is being done ahead of time so that you can have that information to determine your new budget. The regional center could issue an amendment to your current year to add some funds to cover for that assessment itself. And then that would determine what the actual service would require in the following year. Sonni, are there any questions on this item?
There are not on this specific item. I am keeping an eye on the chat. I guess I want to, someone just made Carol made a great point about COVID. So a lot of people have not been able to use all of their budget the way that they intended to meet their needs because of COVID. And so that's going to be a conversation that everyone's going to have, I would expect, at their at their annual renewal date coming up this year. And so we have seen at different regional centers this being handled differently. So, you know, this just like when the first people were entering into the program, we were seeing, and we still are less so, but we're still seeing a lot of variation from regional center to regional center. That is what we're seeing with how budgets are being, you know, looked at and how these decisions are being made. So, you know, I think a lot of regional centers are just having their first people over the last couple of months, or even right now, transitioning from year 1 to year 2. So they're figuring it out as they go too. And there's not a lot of clear guidance on how it's supposed to be done. So we are seeing different regional centers doing things a little bit differently. We can talk more about that at the end too.
So step 5 is agreeing to your individual budget for the upcoming year. So this is about 3 to 4 weeks before your renewal date. You should be reviewing the new budget provided by your regional center. This is, so the way the law is written is that the budgets are to be based on the expenditures from the prior 12 months. So in essence, at this point, you're looking at the current SDP year. But then you're also going to make some adjustments. Maybe there were things that were not needed that might be removed, or maybe there were new needs or unmet needs that were uncovered as part of your PCP process. Those may be added. So just like at the beginning that decision is made, the same thing is being done in the second year as well, or thereafter. The budgets must be certified by the regional center, and then you must agree to this budget in order for it to be certified. So both sides, once it's certified, it can then go into the next step. Okay. And Sonni, I can't see the chat. So if you are seeing anything, I appreciate your help on that.
Okay. Let's see, there's a question about assessments, which I think is a quick one. So maybe I'll just address that now from Carla. So Carla says, is it possible to get a new service like ILS without having to do an assessment? And from our experience, that would, in most cases, no, but in some cases, yes. And it depends on the regional center, and it depends on sometimes the specific need of the client too. We have had some cases where the regional center looked at someone with a similar needs and how much the regional center tended to spend or authorize on that person for this service, and used that to figure how much it would be for our self-determination participant. And but in a lot of cases, they have required assessments, and assessments, sometimes it's really helpful because sometimes the assessment does uncover additional needs that, you know, and so it can be good. And especially if there's disagreement between the participant and the regional center, the assessment can help clarify that sometimes. But I do understand what you're saying, that it does sometimes also seem like a waste of time if you don't intend on using that provider, and also kind of a waste of regional center resources. But that's the way things are done.
Hi, Sonni and Taleen, this is Ed. I just wanted to make sure that before you moved on, another question was answered with respect to budgeting and person-centered planning. Denise asked in the chat, is there a budget for a new PCP planner? I'm assuming in the second year after you've finished your first year of the self-determination program.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you for that question. It's a great question. You want to take that one, Taleen?
Definitely. So when you go into your second year, hopefully when you wrote your budget for your spending plan for your first year, you included the cost of your person-centered planner or your independent facilitator for going into the second year. So in essence, your spending plan or your budget would be paying for it by way of your spending plan. You just have to plan for it in advance. Or if you haven't planned for it, then maybe as you go throughout the year, you realize that that was something that was missed. You can realign some of your funds so that you have the funding to be able to pay for that from the budget or this within the spending plan. Does that pretty much answer it? So there isn't the additional, if you're asking about the $2,500 that was allocated at the beginning for those in the current roll-in, then though that funding will not be available again after this. This was a one-time allotment that was given. So the next step is creating your spending plan for that upcoming year. And at this point, you should be about 2 to 3 weeks out before your annual renewal date. It may be sooner, it may be later, but this is like that really good sweet spot where you've done all your due diligence, you know how you're going to finish your year, and you're ready to move into the next year. So you would create your spending plan for the upcoming year. And again, please make sure that you have your FMS involved, your independent facilitators involved in this process so that it does cover everything and that they know that there's paperwork coming for the upcoming year. Submit your spending plan to your service coordinator for their approval. Give them some time to be able to review it and get back to you. And then when your spending plan is approved, confirm that your FMS has received the necessary paperwork. So again, as we mentioned earlier, purchase of services, purchase of service authorization or a POS from your regional center would be going to your FMS, okay? So as long as they have their paperwork, then they can get you set up for the upcoming year. If at that point you have a new FMS, those are all, you know, items that you have to be addressing as you transition from one year to the next. Sonni, any questions on this one?
Yeah, not specifically on this one, but let's address this one, which is what has been the regional center reaction to COVID issues affecting use of services? You want to go take that one?
I think, yeah, I think again, this is a case by case, and I hear myself saying that a lot, and I apologize, but it really does depend on the regional center and on what those services were and whether or not it was a legitimate non-use of the funds. So a perfect example would be a personal assistant that was supposed to be, you know, going out into community integration. Well, obviously we have not been utilizing that service. So I think it's reasonable that it wasn't used. Those types of things. So if the allotment was for ABA services and you didn't utilize it at all, then they would be wondering, was there a need for it? Because obviously behavioral services would have been something you would have needed, even if it wasn't completely utilized, at least you would have used some of it. That way you can justify the use of it. So it all depends on the need and it all depends on the use.
Mm-hmm. I think, you know, this is where it's important to be in conversation with your regional center and with your service coordinator about kind of what's going on. You know, a lot of people have not been able to use, most people have not been able to use all of their services. Many people have made purchases in lieu of those services. And so sometimes I think what we're anticipating is that some regional centers might say, well, if you bought X, Y, or Z, then you might not, maybe you don't, those are one-time things and you don't need that again. When in reality, those things were only purchased because you weren't able to have the services you would have ordinarily had. So there's definitely a conversation that needs to happen between, you know, between you and your regional center. And on the other hand, don't forget that if you had extra services because of COVID, like if you had additional respite or something like that, that is not guaranteed to be in your budget for next year. Those COVID related additional services are tied to the state of emergency. So those will be only included as long as the state of emergency is continued. So on some hand, so you have sort of both. You have extra services that eventually are going to come out that were issued because of COVID, and you also have services that you didn't get to use because of COVID that need to be added back in. So it's a dialogue.
And since we're talking about that relationship with the regional center, for those individuals who have quarterly reviews with your regional center, that seems to still be continuing throughout, even after you go into self-determination. So if you do have that type of a case, you will have that opportunity. But if you don't, again, if you could reach out to them or make an appointment to meet with them or email back and forth, it's really important for regional center to know where you stand with each of those items. So in terms of what has worked, what has not worked, what went smoothly, what didn't, we wanted to ask one of our clients, Nassreen, and her mom, Roberta, Zarea, who is in education, she's an administrator. I think it would be nice, Ed, if we can have them join us as co-hosts so that they can kind of give their impression of what it was like. Oh, and there they are. Hi,
And
Nassreen.
Nassreen looks festive and awesome. I love that.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. We're really excited about this, sharing information, and I thought it would be a good idea, if it's okay with you, Taleen, that Nassreen talks about her experience a little bit, and then I can share some of the nuances from a parent perspective. Does that work?
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So this is Nassreen Zarea, and she's my daughter. And Nassreen is going to share her experience about the self-determination program.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have been in self-determination program for about 1 year. I love it because I can do what I'm interested in and make my own decisions. I take classes and I am learning how to be more independent. Why are you moving?
Oh, sorry.
Every day I have a different schedule. My life is really full and interesting. Brit from Guidelight Group helped me with my self-determination program. She's awesome. Every day I have an independent living skill coach and help me with cooking, hygiene and other things. I have a cooking class once a week. I have an art class. I take a money management class and a nutrition class. I also have a woman health class in communication art and self-expression class, as well as a stress management class. I also go to my horseback riding lesson 2 times a week. I participate in Angels on Stage, which is in theater troupe for people with disabilities. I am one of the leadership counselors, so I help the young actor in program. I also act in a play. This year was Annie the musical. I really love the fun events in my life, such as dancing bingo, one-time call, and talking to my friend. I read that.
Oh, I have job skills.
I have job skills and coach with Best Buddies. Soon I will be getting a Peloton bike and will take different classes such as yoga, cycling, and meditation. I am trying to help with the self-determination advocacy leadership program to teach more people about the self-determination program. I really love the self-determination program and look forward to the time that the pandemic is over. I can continue to volunteer in my different job and take Uber everywhere I need to go.
Thank you, Nassreen. So you can hear Nassreen has a very full life. Yeah,
Except now everything is online.
yeah, despite the
Well,
pandemic.
it's still full though.
Yeah, still full. And so much of her activities and classes have shifted to virtual in the last year. So we have really listen to Nassreen's interests and continue to really develop a schedule with her that works according to her interests. And you have a pretty good life, don't you?
That's why I came a little bit late to the meeting.
Where were you just now?
Money class.
Yeah, she had a money class. So
I'm here though. I'm done.
Excellent. So I wanted to share some things that have gone well from the beginning and then specifically through the transition from year 1 to year 2. First and foremost, we as a family listen to Nassreen. Like that is our core value, that every decision that's made, Nassreen directs and tells us, what she wants, and it's all aligned to her goals, which we have really specified in her person-centered plan. So that's our foundation, is what Nassreen wants, what her goals are, and what her interests are. So all decisions are made with that. And Nassreen's always been like that. I mean, it's interesting that we've always had that as a philosophy as a family. And even before self-determination came around, that's how we have helped her become the person that she is really just helping her to identify what her needs and interests are, and then developing her life schedule and activities around that. One of the turning points that happened for us as we were on this journey for self-determination, because when we heard about self-determination, we said, this is perfect. This is exactly what Nassreen needs. She's already, has somewhat of a schedule that has been self-determined. And so we decided to apply for the pilot for the self-determination program. But one of the turning points was Nassreen and I attended the statewide conference back in November of 2019, statewide conference on self-determination. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the program is getting better now since I'm helping out.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a moment where we learned so much from other people. We saw what was possible, really thinking outside the box. And we met Sonni and learned about Guidelight group, and really started diving into like this thinking outside the box. I just want to give a plug for this resource, because this has just everything that we needed. Because in the early stages of the pilot, there were not a lot of questions that we had answers to, or not sure. The regional center certainly didn't know. So we said, well, let's learn and find out ourselves. So along with Guidelight group and the resources from the conference and this, we really became more fierce advocates for Nassreen's self-determined program. So along with that, another transformational decision that we made was to work with the Guidelight group as independent facilitators, hire the FMS service. And so I'm so thankful that we have that support in Nassreen's life, because it's made a world of difference for us. And we're pretty resourceful people, but it's just a hard road to travel when there aren't a lot of answers. And the regional center was still learning and is still learning, and gave inconsistent. So what didn't go well, it would be that the regional center gives some inconsistent information sometimes, and is a little slow in responding. So that's been a little frustrating. As you know, one way that we worked around that is not taking no for an answer, and always going back to the law, and really going back to what's best for Nassreen, what Nassreen wants, and what her person-centered plan, which she developed, and making that the basis for all of our decisions along with the law. So the thing that really didn't go well was the pandemic, because Nassreen's self-determination program and budget was all certified and verified and approved in March of 2020. And that's right when the pandemic struck. So we had this great plan and we're ready to move into this. And then suddenly, boom, everything, we're in lockdown. So that was a bummer. So there were a few weeks there, it was like, okay, what are we going to do? And little by little, the services that had been in place started to provide virtual opportunities, and Nassreen really enjoyed.
Oh, what's going to
the-
scroll down?
Oh, thank you. Options for All program, which provides ILS, provided so many and still provides so many classes, and in independent living skills coaching support virtually. So Nassreen's life just moved entirely online, and that's still the case. Although she does have horseback riding in person.
I'm going to start art class soon again.
Art class in person outside.
I'm going to start again. I took a break.
Yeah. So Nassreen, you used to be a member of the YMCA and go to work out there and volunteer there. So since you were not able to go to the gym, what did we do with your budget from self-determination so that you could work out at home?
I have a bike.
What kind of bike?
A Peloton.
So through self-determination, since Nassreen hasn't been able to go to the gym and get out there, the Peloton bike has been incredible. So Nassreen, when you got the bike in November, what have you done every single day since that time?
I did the bike.
Every day. She takes classes and hasn't missed a day, so she's committed. And that's been great, has kept her healthy and happy. So we're appreciative of that as well. So
2 people have their hand up.
Oh yeah. So what also is going well is Nassreen having a sense of advocacy within the self-determination world. So working with a group that does classes or monthly meetings, David Grady.
Yeah, I'm encouraging more people to join.
Yeah, to give testimonials and pull more people into the program.
In June, they want more people to come.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to spread the good word and help other people learn what we already know and what we're learning, right? Yeah, so I mean, that's just a high level overview of our journey, and moving into year 2 has been, it's just sort of a holding pattern because of the pandemic, and there were resources that we haven't spent because of that. So having those discussions and really staying goal focused has been just the way that it's worked so well for Nassreen.
Yeah,
So.
Now I know the program.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about that transition. So when it came to anything that was unused, that was one of the questions that was asked today.
Yeah.
Any of the unused funds, was that a problem keeping those funds going into year 2?
No. Our experience was that it was not a problem because we justified that now that we're going to be coming out of shelter in place and the lockdown and the pandemic, we have plans for moving forward. And
yeah, I'm halfway there. I got my first vaccine.
Yay.
I get my second one April 2nd.
Yeah, so through the support of our independent facilitator, we held those funds tight, and you know, part of what Nassreen was doing pre-pandemic was
working on washing hands for 20 minutes.
Yes, staying healthy. Yeah,
staying healthy. Yeah.
Was a lot of the budget was not a lot, I shouldn't say that, but some part of it was allocated toward Uber and Lyft as transportation, which she obviously couldn't take during the pandemic.
What's going to happen again?
Yes,
just not now.
Yeah, so Nassreen advocated for keeping those funds in place because eventually,
but mom and dad can, if they go back to work.
Yeah.
So I told them to keep my spot open.
Yeah, so that was our experience.
And what would you, is there anything regarding the transition in specific that you would want others to know as a learning experience for you?
From year 1 to year 2?
From year 1 to year 2, that transition, what worked, what didn't?
Yeah.
What did you learn from that process that you wish you knew in advance?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say start early. Your advice about, you know, pre-planning, like backwards mapping several months prior to that anniversary date is critical because everything seems to take longer than you would expect. And so really looking at the budget and
whoever wants to join should start early.
Yes, start early.
Start early, then delay yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's how you set yourself up for success, right? Mm-hmm. So really looking at the budget in advance and really assigning, just mapping everything back to the goals in the person-centered plan. And then we actually looked at her IPP and did our own assessment internally, like, okay, what are the areas that she's still working on? Where has she made progress? What are things, how do we stretch from this point? So we did our own assessment that way. And then Options for All, who provides independent living skills, did an assessment because we realized we left out safety as a goal entirely, and had just,
Now
kind of,
it's part of my goal.
exactly, because they did an assessment and really got to the heart of what the critical safety goals are that Nassreen should have and should work on.
And I'm
So,
learning about circles now.
boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would just say pre-planning and really doing your homework and reflecting on progress, and also how to stretch to the next level.
And
It
just to
depends
clarify,
what participants have to do every day. If they have speech, if they don't, depends what they had to do.
Exactly.
and just to clarify the idea of assessment that you mentioned and what I mentioned earlier, these are assessments that are ongoing for the services. So you didn't need to go to the regional center for funding for that assessment.
No.
Whereas the assessment I mentioned earlier would be for a new service that you might need to get an additional authorization for that funding for that particular service.
Exactly. Yeah.
In this case, doing an assessment and identifying an additional goal did allow you to add what in the traditional system would have been more hours of that service. And so in self-determination, it raised your budget a little bit, right?
Exactly.
It depends what you need. Depend what activity your kids had or child had or adults have.
Exactly. So
It's all not the same. We all don't do the same thing.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, everyone's different.
So that is the case, Sonni. So that assessment allowed Nassreen to have more time with ILS to have safety specific training as part of her ILS services, but that required an increase in budget.
It depends what the people need different things.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Sonni, there's a couple of hands up. Do we want to answer those questions, or do you want me to go over the last slide and then open it up to everyone for questions?
Let's maybe bring up the last slide because I know it's a quick one, and
It is
then
very quick.
kind of a summary, and then let's start with people with their hands raised because we've been doing the ones in the chat. So
perfect. So just to recap what we've been talking about, we wanted to make sure that these top recommendations are highlighted. First of all, keeping everybody in the loop: regional center, independent facilitator, FMS, your circle of support if needed. As long as you've got everybody in the loop, then the transition should go smoothly. Definitely start between 2 to 3 months out, depending on whether or not you think you're going to need an assessment, or if some of the regional centers right now are just going through this for the first time. So starting early gives that extra buffer along the way for everyone to have time to make decisions and figure out what the next steps are. Confirm your transition date in advance. We're finding that a couple of the regional centers are changing the transition date from the middle of the month to the first of the following month or the first of that month. So that may change how you need to designate some of your funds, and also decide if you have enough that needs to be stretched out or if you have to request additional funding. So just confirm your transition date, whether it will be the same as when you started or if there's going to be some sort of a change. And then be persistent with following up with the regional center and the FMS. So that's where we are. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I think Sean has been waiting for quite a bit. So I think we can start.
Hold on real quick. Why don't you stop sharing screen? And if you all are okay, I would love to get a copy of the of this, and we can put it up on our website. I just want to tell everybody, because I realized I didn't do this at the beginning. First of all, Nassreen, you're freaking amazing. Amazing. You should be like the president of self-determination in the state of California, and I nominate you.
Nassreen, I hope that, Nassreen, I hope you look at the chat, because so many people gave you really nice feedback on your presentation in the chat. So make sure you check that out.
Amazing. Secondly, I wanted to talk about, because you talked about the conference that you went to last year, and I meant to say this at the beginning, is that DBU is putting together another conference. Sadly, it is not in person because of the sucky world we currently live in. We promise next year it will be in person. We're committed to that. But it is very soon. It's 30 days from today. I'm going to ask when she has a moment that Ed put in the chat the link. If you are not on our mailing list, if you are on our mailing list, you would have been getting tons and tons of emails about the conference. But the conference is vendored with regional centers officially now, and boy, is that a pain in the butt. It is for those of you who have not yet gone into the self-determination program, for those of you in the self-determination program, we will be able to send a bill to your FMS. And we are very excited because we are pulling together some great panels and speakers for all of you. And it's going to be a great event. At the registration fee currently is $50. It goes up to $75 on the 19th, or maybe on the 20th. Yeah, the 19th is the last day. I can't remember, but it's really soon. So you'll have on the 19th to register for the lower amount. So for those of you who want to really stretch your self-determination budget, make sure to register sooner rather than later. The final thing is that all of these SDP Connects go up on our interchange. So we have a self-determination interchange with a forum that you can talk to people and ask people questions. And we encourage you to use it, and we'll get that up in the, it's already up, there it is. So let's move along then to Q&A. And I'm happy to moderate it so that you guys can all answer it. Sean, did you have a question, Sean? I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
I was trying to talk and say, Nassreen, you are outrageously great, and you are look like a wonderful kid. Yeah, if I had a kid, I would want one just like you. Really, you're a wonderful girl. I wanted to say that right off the top. I was chosen for itself to actually. When they at the regional center of the East Bay, I was not chosen first, and then they go, oh, someone dropped out, and then they just threw me in there. I go, oh, really? I get to do this, and then I get to the meet and greet, and nothing happened. I'm still here, sitting here, waiting for my turn, for my self-determination to even start. So, you know, my question is are any of these self-determination stuff, can you pay for the People First conference or some sort of a thing going on? You know, because I'm part of the I'm in like 3 chapters of the People First conference. And I don't know if any of you know who I am. I'm Sean Costello. I run for mayor of Dublin all the time. I'm a big advocate for the disabled. I've been I've been actually on the ballot for 32 years to be either the city council or the mayor of Dublin, California, and I am proud of that. I'm proud to be able to run for office, and I want to say, Nassreen, you can run for office too. You can be a mayor if you wanted to be, or a city council if you wanted to be, and I would love to show you how to do that, how to register to vote. You know, because I would love to be one of your speakers and go, hey, everybody, this is how you run for office with a disability. And you know, because out of everybody in the whole entire city, I get the less votes of everybody, but I get the most feedback. People going, man, you're so entertaining when you run. because you're making jokes at everybody and all that, you know, and you're really trying to make a better life for other people with disabilities, and that's what I'm trying to do. And
That's so great, Sean. I mean, I just, first of all, yes, you can put in whatever you want in your spending plan within reason, right? So as long as it's meeting your IPP goals, and you cannot get funding for that from a generic resource, like let's say you want to do medical care, well, your insurance or Medi-Cal should be paying for that. But something like a conference absolutely should be put in. You could even include, by the way, travel to that conference when things open up, which you couldn't do in the traditional system. So if you want to budget, let's say you're going to Sacramento and you need to stay at a hotel, your self-determination program can pay for all of those expenses.
yeah,
Great. It will not pay for food. That's the only thing it will not do. But I also wanted to just point out how Sean is so amazing because he's offering services that he can provide. And what we're seeing a lot is that people are able to, through the self-determination program, hire other people with disabilities to be your advisor, to be your guide. And so this is actually creating employment for people with disabilities on top of having people be able to live their best lives. So I don't know if Sonni or Taleen or Nassreen, you want to comment on anything else that Sean said?
I would agree with that. We've actually been able to connect some of our clients, or the participants that we're supporting, who have hired other people. Like we have one young man that we support who has coached basketball before. We had another family who was looking for a basketball coach, and so one of our participants in self-determination was then hired by the other participant in self-determination to coach basketball for the child. So we are definitely seeing that. So it's pretty cool. So Sean, but it sounded like, Sean, you were selected in the second round of the lottery to enter the phase-in period, but you have not started in self-determination. Is that right?
Right.
So, and so you're feeling stuck. So
yes.
Have you been connected with, or have you spoken with any independent facilitators yet? Because
no.
So that would be a great.
I talked to my social worker Eileen at least 3 times about it, and nothing happened. So I just sit here going, well, what do I do? I don't. I wanted to get at first. I wanted to get a computer because this one is dying. It could die any time in between our conference. I was in the middle of a debate with a whole bunch of 8 other candidates, and my computer just dropped everything twice in the middle of the debate. It made me look really weak and everything, and it made me feel small and everything. So I needed a new computer. Still, I have not yet gotten my my thing going yet, and so I'm going like, well, am I talking to the right person or what?
So I think that what we're going to do, Sean, is we should be following up with you, okay? Because I think you could definitely use some assistance. So let's definitely follow up. We're running out of time, so we're going to need to go to the next speaker. But Sean, we're going to be in touch, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Connie Lipinski, you are next.
All right, here I am. I'm the one. First of all, Nassreen, you're a rock star. It was a great presentation, and being one of the founders of self-determination in the sense of passing the law, you have no idea how this feels. But my question is about COVID still. Are regional centers, in your experience, being sensitive to the fact that people can't access services because of COVID, and are not in agreement to extend them? That's my question.
So we are seeing, so in Nassreen's case, it was not an issue. And so we are seeing a little bit of variation on that, but in general, it has been okay. We have hit so we've worked with a few different regional centers so far. And so different regional centers are doing things a little bit differently. So we've had some initial pushback in some cases where we had to really sort of talk it out and maybe get some other people involved. But we have not had any like blockages yet with the COVID issue. So regional centers so far have been to varying degrees, but understanding of that issue so far from what we've seen.
And just to add on, a couple of them have been very forthcoming, reminding us that the COVID funds, the additional funds, whether it's the FMS funds or the additional respite or anything extra that they've been doing, they've been wanting to make very clear distinction on where that money is coming from so that they can pull it back next year. So we've been seeing that as well. And to be honest with you, rightfully so, it was intended for this purpose. And if the state of emergency ends, then the funding would end in a traditional system, so it should end here. But they're being very, very clear and making sure that we understand that that's coming. Do we?
Any other comments on that? No? Okay. So let's move to Kelly Kulzer-Reyes.
Unmute. I am unmuted now. Sorry, guys. Okay, thank you. It's lovely to have everybody here today. This is a great session. Actually, I want to make one comment on the COVID to follow up with Connie's, and then I have a question that I'd like to make sure. And actually, I wrote it down while we were thinking, so I wouldn't forget what I was going to ask. So the directive states once the emergency is over, but the emergency will likely end prior to people under 16 being eligible for vaccine. So I don't know if anyone in this particular group is able to speak to how that impacts next year's budget or not, or how it might. For example, my daughter will be 9 in July. There's no way she's going to be eligible for vaccine until 2022. There's no way she's going to be safe in public, even if the state of emergency is over. So are we looking at a distinction? So that's question number one, between 16 and under, people who just cannot get a vaccine yet, and then people 16 and over who are eligible, but maybe choose not to or choose to get vaccinated. And that's a whole different conversation for a different day that doesn't impact next year's budget for my question. But then the second, do you want that question first and then have me ask
that? So
okay.
I really wish I knew someone who serves on the DS task force who could bring that up.
I was actually going to do that the next time I'm at a DS
do
task
you
force
serve
meeting.
on the DS task force?
It's interesting that you ask, because in fact, I serve on the DS task force.
So that's
but I was kind of saying it out loud for the whole public so that everyone would have this question on their mind. So they would all send me a note saying, hey, Kelly, wouldn't you think that'd be a great question to ask the DS task force next meeting?
I mean, I don't think
was I a plant?
Yeah.
Was I a plant?
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah.
It could have happened.
Yeah, that is clearly something that they haven't thought about yet.
Agreed.
You know, there are going to be certainly people who have very
people who can't take the vaccine, right?
Vaccine.
Yes.
And then there will be others who are too young to get the vaccine. So school is going to look different for these folks next year. And it's not just them, by the way. It's also adults who are in congregate settings. Like a day program will not be able to go back to any kind of congregate setting, although I hope they don't reopen anyway. But school is a congregate setting that you cannot avoid, and it's actually a good congregate setting because it's inclusive. So yeah, I think that these are very, very valid statements, and that DDS needs to issue some guidance on that, and therefore it'll impact people's budgets as well. It's
that was my thought. I just wanted to share those thoughts. Don't know if maybe it'll come up at a DS task force meeting soon.
Yeah.
Who knows? Could happen. Yeah. May I ask my second question now, ma'am? Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. All right. Earlier, I asked a question in the chat about the distinction between the IPP calendar year and the SDP calendar year. So I'm helping families. This was never my goal. I'm helping families move into self-determination. And one of the honors of this is working with different regional centers. And I said honor, I meant honor. Thank you very much, Sassy Pants. Okay, so I've already done the second IPP, the move into the annual the next SDP plan, because we had 4 months in self-determination and we had a birthday. Now we're in the next 12 months of it. And so we had no problem. We had no problem with COVID. We had no problem with getting the same funding amount for the next year, because I think they knew that they asked it, like making a big deal about that when we thought it was 12 months wasn't going to go well. So we kept going. But it's my understanding that the law states that it's a 12-month budget. And I've got 2 regional centers currently not doing a 12-month budget. They're doing a specifically IPP, continue with the birth date budget. Does anyone know how to clarify such situations? And is there any problem with going forward with my daughter had a 7-month SDP plan budget, she had a 7-month spending plan, and we took the budget and divided it into 7 months. Okay, it worked out. It was identical funding. The challenge though was maybe we would have done things a little bit differently. Maybe we wouldn't have. At this point, it's too late to know. I wanted her in the program. It's life-changing, like many have said in the chat. We're doing great. Life has never been better. I haven't had to hurt anyone in a year. It's been fantastic. What's the difference then between the regional centers that are using that birth date IPP? And then how do you even know if they're using it if they're not contacting you? Mm-hmm. Right? So like I want to start 2 to 3 months beforehand. I know for my daughter, I should be starting yesterday because, yay, let's do that again. But how do you even, do you have to call your service coordinator and say, when are we scheduling our IPP for the next meeting? Mm-hmm. Because they're not going to? Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to this, but I can echo that this is a challenge that we're seeing.
Challenge is a nice word for it. Thank you, Sonni. I appreciate that.
You definitely want to confirm in writing with your service coordinator in advance, months before, 6 months before, 5 months before. Just check in. Hey, service coordinator, I'm just wanting to confirm, when is my renewal date? Because
what do you think? I'm sorry, Sonni, to interrupt you, but what do you think about when you move into self-determination, if you think of it, asking at that time?
It should be, and most of it should. It's supposed to be 12 months. It's supposed to be 12 months. But we're seeing regional centers wanting to make adjustments for various reasons. One is birth date, as you said. Actually, we haven't encountered that yet, but birth date is reasonable. The other is if we have people who, if you started SDP in the middle of the month, like on the 15th of the month, for example, regional centers are wanting to move you to the 1st of the month, either before or after. And it kind of makes sense why they want to make this change, because one thing that we're realizing is that if you start SDP in the middle of the month, you end up paying for 13 months of an FMS service because they charge you that first month and they charge you that last month. And there's some confusion that happens when you have a middle of the month start date. So it actually is helpful to start on the 1st of the month, but it gets challenging if you want to make that change, because then you have to give some money back, and we didn't plan for that. We did have one example where the regional center wanted the renewal date, our understanding was the middle of the month, and the regional center said, no, you actually have to make your funds last until the end of the month. That was 2 extra weeks of daily staff and all of these services that we didn't plan on. So don't have an answer for you there, but that is something for people to be aware of, that that we are seeing some regional centers do some creative things with changing the date, but it is supposed to be 12 months.
You mentioned jump in on that one real quick, only because the particular case that Sunny's mentioning, we had budget, everything was based on 12 months, 52 weeks, correct? However, the POS to the FMS, so the purchase agreement to the FMS, which the client nor we saw until we asked for it at the end, actually had the end of the month as the end of the term. So they had 54 weeks.
That's a lot of extra money in
POS,
some
but
cases.
the money was only allocated for 52 weeks. So it
Gotcha.
became an issue. We were trying to make it work, but these are the types of things. And that's why I always mention, if you could double check with your FMS, what they've received as the end of your date or your transition date, that may be another way to clarify that.
Double check.
Mhm.
You mentioned the FMS in the 13 months. This kind of brings up my question about the DDS directive and them covering the FMS during COVID. We're having troubles, and this is slightly on the same topic and slightly off. So if you want to take the question later, that's fine, or never take it. I respect that. But we're having people have to justify the COVID need for using the directive.
No.
And that's what I said. I said that is not what the directive says.
Yeah.
The directive
the
does not say you must justify this.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone could tell regional centers that on this call, or take it back to your home base.
DDS sent a
Appreciate
directive.
it.
They're required by law to follow the directive.
That is what I
but it was
shared.
clarified.
So
So here's what everybody should know, is that it is to your advantage to claim that you need to change your budget or you change your spending plan due to COVID, because then those monies stay in your overall, it basically increases your individual budget. If you just want to transfer money from the FMS to another category, it doesn't increase your individual budget amount. So it is to your advantage to actually make a claim. And shouldn't almost everything you're doing right now be because of COVID? It's not like we're doing anything else. So it's like, I used increasing my son's staffing because it is COVID and he needs more staffing because he's not doing as much in any kind of program. So I think that, I think you can justify pretty much it's like $165 a month at the most. So it's not a lot to justify. You just got to make sure you're putting it into something, right? And spending it on something. All right, let's keep going to Marla. Oh, Marla needs to unmute. Oh, there we go. Good.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. So I would be new to the self-determination program, hoping to start in June, and I'm trying to educate myself on it all. I have actually 3 questions, and I can just ask them quickly one at a time. My first question is, why, I understand the self-determination program, you're supposed to make the case for unmet need. Why not simply just make that case in the traditional program? Like, I'm getting respite and and I'm using the person who I like for respite, and a few other things of people who I'm using who I like. So what is the reason then to enter the self-determination program? Is it to simply ask for more hours? Is it to simply ask for a larger budget? And if so, why don't I just ask for that anyway in the traditional system, is my first question.
Maybe Nassreen can talk about some of the things that she can do in self-determination that she could not do in the traditional system, because that's really the reason. If for Nassreen and Roberta.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the things you can do now that you didn't do before?
Take my classes online.
Yeah.
And then
like art class, that wasn't an option. Horseback riding.
And then doing my IPP online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really just having more flexibility in the activities and
more opportunities
mm-hmm.
online like speech and stuff.
Mhm. We didn't have that flexibility
Mm.
prior to self-determination.
No
It was very
therapy, yeah.
regimented and sort of like boxes that she had to try to find which box she needed. But now pretty much she determines what direction her life is going, and
I just
what-
don't take Uber or Lyft now. It's
not
not
yet,
safe.
but you will. Yeah.
But that's a good
yeah,
example.
flexibility, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay,
even
so-
something like Uber or Lyft is a great example, because in self-determination, that's how Nassreen, that's the way that she can be the most independent and get around in the community. You can't do that in the traditional system. You can't do horseback riding, you can't do art classes, but these are the things that make a difference in her life that she wants, and that help her to to sort of to
Right.
work towards her goals. So the flexibility.
I see.
There's
And so-
also the issue that some of the vendors are not vended directly with the regional center, so they may not be an option. So it may be a service that is approved by the regional center, but the vendor that you want to work with isn't. So now you have the flexibility for that as well.
I see. Okay. So, but I guess if I'm getting respite and maybe some summer help, like a community access specialist who I like, but they only reimburse, a certain amount. Can I ask for more than that? I think they reimburse, 12, 13 something dollars an hour. Can I ask for more than that? If that's what I'm paying? Because I guess the services are already approved through the traditional system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would they
So-
increase their what they reimburse, or they can't do that?
So your budget in self-determination is based on, first and foremost, your person-centered plan. So a person of any age should start with a person-centered plan, because there might be goals or needs that you haven't even thought of, or you didn't even realize could be addressed by something through the regional center. So that's always the first step. But the amount of money in your budget is going to be based on how much money would the regional center spend on services to meet your needs in the traditional system. But an independent facilitator can help you look at the services that you're getting, and if those really are the best services to meet your needs, and kind of help you sort through that. But then you can repurpose those funds in more creative ways, and most people are able to get more bang for your buck, so to speak, by allocating funds the way that you want to in self-determination, rather than doing it the way that the regional center has dictated in the traditional system.
Okay. And the third thing is, the regional center, they've told me that they'll be sending out a cost sheet in mid-May. Does that sound right to all of you, that,
No.
I have to wait till mid-May to get those costs? They did send me what they've spent in the past, I think 12 months, because I asked for
that you can
but,
get.
but they said there's a more detailed cost sheet that's coming out in mid-May.
I'm not sure what that is.
Okay.
But anybody it is, according to the Land Term Act, having nothing to do with the self-determination program. Any consumer at any time can ask for their cost statement, and you can ask for it to be as detailed as you want it to be. Personally, I find them to be very hard to understand, because there's always rate codes and everything, but you can ask for that at any time. I'm not sure what they're talking about. I don't know what regional center is this?
Lanterman.
Yeah, I don't know what a cost sheet is. Maybe you can try to get some explanation and come back on and get it to us.
And then,
have you heard that term, Sonni? Cost sheet?
Yeah, I think maybe it's, I saw Adrian on here, but I think it's probably the 12-month expenditure report. It's called different things.
okay.
So actually I can speak to your specific regional center. So actually Lanterman has a really awesome format that they give everyone. You said, Judy, it's super confusing the way that they're generated by the regional center. They are. Lanterman has a format that's really easy to understand, but I think they have to manually create it for each person. So they're not automatically generating those for every single person they serve. So the one that you got is probably the one that the system generates, and it's probably like kind of weird looking and not that informative, they can give you one that is more detailed and catered to you, and easier to read and understand. But I think it's time consuming for them to produce. They manually produce it for you. I think that's probably what they're referring to.
And then I've asked, can I meet with them before June if I have my PCP all done so I can hit the ground running in June? I didn't know if that was a reasonable thing to ask or not, but they said no. So I guess my fear is that they're going to be so inundated come June that it's going to take a few months to meet with everyone and approve the PCP and approve the budget. Do you think that will happen?
I think it's reasonable for you to ask that. But I'm not seeing any regional centers moving on working with people and starting that process for people who want to start in June yet.
Right, okay.
So I'm going to move us on only because there's a few more people and we have a party to go to. And when I say a party, I mean in my living room because there's no partying during COVID. But it is a corned beef and cabbage night. So Melissa Arden, you're next. Let's have you unmute. Oh, good, great.
Hi everyone. I don't know why my video is not working, sorry, but it's so nice to see everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I have a question because I think I might not have read the COVID directive from DDS, but I've been told by the regional centers that any of the COVID resources that my clients are getting right now won't carry over to self-determination. And so that's why we've put a hold on going full in, is because they said we can't use that money for self-determination. Is that not true, Judy? Because I'm watching your face and you're like, oh my gosh.
Center?
What?
What's your regional center?
I have a couple of them, Inland Empire and West Side.
West Side is saying that you can't put COVID hours into your budget?
Yeah.
Recently?
Well, no, not recently.
So
this was back, I think in November, maybe even over last summer. No.
No. It's very
maybe no.
They've changed.
Okay, great. So what is it? Can you tell me? I'm sorry. Or can I call you later or email you?
You have, if in the traditional system, you would be eligible for extra hours because of COVID, whether it's extra personal assistance hours or respite hours or whatever, the amount of that money can go into a person's budget. But remember that once the state of emergency ends, that money will be taken out of your budget. So you have to be super careful in how you use it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then if somebody has any resources for photography class or art class or online classes, if you can email me, that'd be really great. Thank you.
Definitely. All right, great. Thanks. Evelyn's going to be speaking in Spanish, I'm pretty sure. So Lorna, heads up.
Hola, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes, Judy. Hola a todos. Sobre eso que acaba de decir la señora, en el caso de Orange County, sí están dando las horas de COVID. Primero tenemos que entrar al programa de autodeterminación y a las 2 semanas ya hacen un nuevo budget con las horas de COVID agregados. El gran problema es que todo centro regional hace lo que quiere. Ese es el gran problema. Mi pregunta es, se supone que autodeterminación es libertad. ¿Por qué si hay un dinero que uno no gastó por el tema de COVID, por el tema de reclutar personas que trabajen con tu hijo, y si hay un dinero que ahí no se gastó, ¿por qué el centro regional te está obligando a que lo gastes? Por ejemplo, yo tuve que viajar por motivos familiares a mi país, Perú, y pedí, cuando regresé, salió la ley que teníamos que hacer cuarentena obligatoria. Y pasé la cuarentena, me hice la prueba y recién pude regresar a casa. Yo no pude, el servicio genérico y Home Support Service, que soy yo, no estuvo presente. Entonces se trabajó más horas de respiro. Pedí al centro regional que me devuelva esas horas que gasté de mi presupuesto. Y no lo quieren. Estamos yendo a audiencia por eso. Me dicen, hey, tienes dinero en tu presupuesto, no utilizaste los primeros meses, de ahí agarra. O sea, pero yo no lo veo eso como libertad. Ese dinero ya estaba presupuestado para otras cosas. Ha sido muy difícil en este tiempo de pandemia encontrar personas que trabajen, y encima mi hijo es un caso challenger en comportamientos. Entonces, me gustaría que me digan cuando ustedes dicen autodeterminación, libertad, o sea, entonces, ¿a qué se refieren, no? Y otra cosa que dejé en el chat fue preguntas acerca de equipos. ¿Qué equipos bajo autodeterminación sí podemos comprar? ¿Qué equipos no? Estamos yendo a audiencia también por eso. Tengo 3 clientes, soy facilitadora independiente, y también por los equipos, también nos estamos yendo a audiencia. Y eso es algo yo creo que va a generar a futuro mucha barrera. Y me gustaría que hablen de ese tema un poquito más. Gracias.
Yeah, you know, we're hearing a lot of those problems, but you know, the flexibility of regional centers to sort of support people in a crisis, like obviously what just happened with Evelyn, where she returned from a trip, had to be quarantined, couldn't take care of her child, and needed some support. That's no different than it is in the traditional system, right? It's just in self-determination, you ask for an increase in your budget or a change in the way you're spending your spending plan. And then in the traditional system, you ask for an increase in the number of hours. The ability of regional centers to be able to respond to crises like this is very poor, which is, of course, you know, kind of defeats the point of a regional center. So that's a very deep, difficult question to answer, and I agree that it's a problem. All right, I'm going to take just one more question, everybody, because we have a very hardworking Spanish-speaking interpreter. Sean, I think that we're going to take Joyce's question, and then we're going to have to end. I'm sorry, because we have an interpreter that's been alone interpreting, and I always promise her to try to get off as close to 6 o'clock as possible, because it's very hard to interpret. So Joyce, go right ahead.
Hi. You know, I am so sorry. I missed the first part. So is this recorded with everyone doing their speaking in the beginning? Yeah. Because it's the one I really wanted to get on, and I can't even believe that I messed up. But you know, we're supposed to be an SDP, but what has it been going? We were one of the original ones that got our personal planning, all that, but it never went through. And so obviously, I guess, because I never heard from an FMS or anything. And so my daughter got into a program just under the wire at the pandemic. So she's been on Zoom. It's been great, but it's under traditional services. So, you know, I'm one of those ones where you don't want to rock the boat, but yet you want to move forward, because look at all these beautiful things that Roberta can do and everything, you know. So I did get a call by somebody from the regional center in Concord, so I have yet to call them back. I just wanted to make sure that our program that we're in does independent billing or whatever, you know, that isn't kind of mired into the system. So I guess I don't have any specific question. It's just that I'm still like in limbo, and it's stressful, because it's like that other young woman mentioned, you know, you have your services in place and you get nervous to rock the boat, that if it's going to mess up something. So I guess I just called the regional center and say, and the caseworker was new and all of that to SDP. This seems like there's a lot of inconsistency with how they're barriers to implementing this thing. So should I just call this lady back and say what gives?
You know, my recommendation would be, which regional center?
Of the East Bay.
Of the East Bay. If you can find an independent facilitator, and there are some great ones in your area, someone who has helped another person or another family go through the process before, that I think would really help you, because there are it is a process and there are steps. And while you can certainly do it on your own and you do not have to have an independent facilitator, if you were selected for the lottery, through the lottery for the phase-in, there is funding for you to have someone to help you. And there are people that have experience doing this that can help you move along. So you might as well take advantage of that. And I think it would really help you, because it sounds like you're just stuck. And
yeah, and actually, so we've sort of been on hold, but we did actually engage the IF, so that's good. So this is helping me to appreciate, it's just what the overall picture is. And so I will just patiently wait on him, because he's had all these people bottlenecked. And so we're coming right up on that, but I just wanted, I guess, the validation and the reassurance. And so that's good. So I've engaged that person, so I'll just hang on and connect with him. I'm supposed to connect with him again at the end of the month. So, but I sure appreciate all your efforts, Judy. That's just so amazing. I don't even know how I discovered you. Something came up and it was like, wow.
Make sure you're on our mailing list, Joyce, so that you get invited to all the rest of them. We're doing it every other week right now. And then we have a conference in 30 days. Yeah. So, and I know that there are groups that could help you in our CEB. So for sure, let's make it happen.
I appreciate that you do. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to ask Ed to just put one more time in the chat how you get on our mailing list. And I want to thank our great presenters, Sonni and Taleen and Roberta and Nassreen, mostly Nassreen. And Nassreen will be hearing from me soon, because Nassreen is going to be speaking at our self-determination conference. I already have some ideas for you. So I will be sending you an invite. So, so thanks everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Try to have a little joy in your life, because I'm optimistic. We are getting hundreds of people hundreds of people with disabilities vaccinated around LA right now. And I am super, super happy about that. So take care, everybody. Sonni, mazel tov on your baby when she comes, because this is going to be your last SDP Connect as a non-parent, which is just relish that moment.
thank you.
Children are totally overrated. I'm just saying. All right, everybody. Thanks, everyone. And we will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.